Welcome to the Gold Standard here from the 440 Sports Network and lowerbroadhockey.com. My name is Braden Gall, and I'm back in the sewers, y'all. I'm back. Twitter.com, X, whatever you want to call it. I am there at Braden Gall, and I'm back in the sewers, bathing and lounging and enjoying sports commentary. What is up?
Did you ever leave the sewers? Did I miss something?
I took like a hiatus.
Oh,
you know?
Okay. Well, welcome back.
That's Emma Lingan. You can follow her at Emma_Lingan.
Sorry.
Talking about her makeup habits in parking lots all over Twitter.com. And that, of course, is Michael Gallagher at MG_Sports_. What, Emma? You were if you're going to tweet about what you're doing in the parking lot of Preds games, I think it's fair game on the show.
Only women, my fellow women, will understand how impressive that is. That's why I tweeted about it. I was like, hey, I just did my mascara with one hand in a car rearview mirror while eating a donut with the other hand, which is the most hockey season thing ever. And it's impressive. So just had to shout myself out there.
Agreed. Mike, what did you do in a parking lot at the Ford Ice Center in Bellevue?
Nothing that entertaining, let me tell you that.
Donut sounds good right about now, by the way. We are, of course, brought to you by Sinkers Beverages. Make sure I got the shirt right there. Look at this, guys. I got some. If you're watching on YouTube, which, by the way, you should, put up that thumbs up there on the YouTube channel. If you're watching on Twitter or Facebook, give us a share as well. Get people into the comments. There's some swag there. I got some hats. There's a Sinkers Beverage hat right there. Look, here's another one. There's a black one right there. Looks good. I got the shirt on, branding, the whole deal. Make sure you go to Sinkers, sign up for the in-crowd. Huge Predators fans, and we've got some cool stuff planned for you. The Fantasy League draft, we're working on where that could be held. That's coming up very soon, and of course we are. We've got some fun watch party stuff planned for you guys at Sinkers Beverages headquarters. We'll give you more information on that coming up. But go swing by their location in East Nashville, 3-time liquor store of the year. Sign up for the in-crowd, gives you all kinds of access to cool stuff like allocations and specials and tastings, events, etc. So check that out. And of course, you can check out their partner store, their sister store up in Hendersonville, Bluegrass Beverages. That I want to say a combined 90 years of serving Middle Tennessee and all your needs. So make sure you check them out and search Sinkers Beverages on Uber Eats and have them deliver the booze directly to your house. They drive so you can drink.
We're going to Sinkers help me get into the fantasy league because I'm still locked out. I still cannot get in there. So if you beat me, it's probably because I can't get into the damn league.
Emma, should we fix this? Because it was auto-renewed. If you're on Yahoo, it auto-renews. And so it's been auto-renewed, which means, Mike, I think you've been either logged out of your Yahoo app or I don't know how to help you here.
No, I
auto-renewed.
I deleted the app. I re-downloaded it. I signed out of Yahoo and everything. And then I signed back in and it keeps saying that I don't have access to the league. And I'm even clicking on the links that you send when you change the name of the league. And I'm going directly to the league.
When you're already signed up for the league, you shouldn't have to click on the link anyway.
I know, but when I sign in on Yahoo and it said, and I cannot find where the league is, I cannot find fantasy hockey. It acts as if I'm not there. So my team is in the hub, but I can't get in there.
So Emma, should we do anything to fix this or just let it happen?
I mean,
it's up to you guys, but don't go bragging about beating me if I can't actually build my own team and set it up and get the players I want.
Oh, I'm going to brag about being able to work the internet better than you.
Also, don't drag me into this. I'm brand new here. I joined, but I was also new, and it was a different link for me. So
fantasy hockey fights everyone is what it sounds like is happening on the pod today.
Also, the name of my team name.
There you go.
Hockey fights everyone.
And if you know, you know. Lots of stuff. Training camp opens today. We're recording this on Wednesday. We are live, of course, on the video platform. So check us out. If you're listening on the podcast app. Training camp starts on Wednesday. All the players report, and of course on Thursday practice begins. They will have a game against Florida on the road on Sunday. 2 games, I should say, 1 o'clock and 5 o'clock. We'll get into training camp storylines that we want to watch for and look for that you guys need to know about on and off the ice. We've got pressure and expectations. I've had this one conversation with a former player like lingering in my head for the last week, and I want to sort of floated. I just got to get it out of my system. So I'm going to ask you guys about it. Rookie showcase took place over the weekend. I had a chance to go out there and watch some of that. I know, Emma, you were out there, as you just alluded to. So we'll give you some of our quick overarching reactions there. And Michael Gallagher, the prospect guide, is live right now on lowerbroadhockey.com. It is a beautiful PDF that Michael has put together for you guys, ranking all of the top 25 prospects, complete with scouting reports, NHL ETAs, all kinds of great stuff in there. It's a great guide and a tool for you guys to have over the course of the season. So make sure you go subscribe, lowerbroadhockey.com, and we'll get into some of those prospects a little bit later on. Our thoughts on the system, excuse me, the system itself, the entire prospect system. We're not going to get into ranking all 25 players on the show today. If you want that and you want to comment on that, make sure you go and check out lowerbroadhockey.com. Also, our newest podcast with Adam Vingan, myself, and Adam Vingan will be we'll be recording on Mondays moving forward. We're going to start that on Monday, so that'll only be available on lowerbroadhockey.com. So there you go. Go ahead and sign up there. Did I miss anything else? I got the Twitter handles. I got all the housekeeping in. Am I missing anything? All right.
I think we're good.
Just add Michael to the fantasy league.
Yes, it sounds like I haven't gotten that done yet. Okay. If you want to ask questions about camp and you want to respond, jump into the comments, please do so. You can do so there, and we'll get to those questions. Otherwise, I just want to start with camp in general. We've had this whole entire offseason, 18 months now of transition. It's all here. The players are in town. Practice begins on Thursday. We've talked about lines, and we've talked about off the ice. We've talked about everything. What is it you are most looking forward to as camp gets started this week?
I think it's got to be seeing what the hell Steven Stamkos does. I mean, I think you and Adam hit the nail on the head in your last podcast that you guys did. This is probably the most exciting this team has been and the most buzz that's been around this team since 2016, 2017. And I think when Stamkos is going to arrive, I don't think it's going to be the fanfare that PK Subban had, because he had half of Canada at Bridgestone Arena trying to get interview requests with him, and my God, trying to walk in the locker room. And that was before the locker room was renovated. So imagine a smaller space than it already is with all the players in there, all the local media. And then you add about 35 hockey writers from Canada trying to squeeze in. It was not fun. I don't think we're going to see that kind of level of craziness, but I do think just kind of the attention that Steven Stamkos is going to bring. So I'm curious to see how that kind of plays out, because other than when Subban was here in the Cup run, obviously there hasn't really been a lot to be excited about with this team. They've kind of been in the doldrums for about a 4 or 5 year period. So I think just the buzz around the city, the buzz around Stamkos, and then obviously what are the lines going to look like? It's what we've all been talking about all summer. Do you put Marchessault and Stamkos with Forsberg? Do you give that line a look and see what it looks like? Because you already know what your top line of O'Reilly, Forsberg, and Nyquist is going to give you, and then just kind of look where the other line combinations are. Is Luke Evangelista a top 6 player like we all think he should be? Is he going to be in the bottom 6? Is Colton Sissons going to be in the bottom 6? Do you put him in the top 6? I mean, Tommy Novak, just what does Andrew Burnett do with all the line combinations that are possible? I think is kind of what I'm looking for.
Yeah, that was a little bit of everything. So I guess I'll say I'm interested to see what happens with the defense, just because there's kind of, obviously, Brady Shea is the big addition there. You have Roman Josi, Carrier's back. Assume he's going to be with Lausanne again, but we don't know. And then there's really kind of, I'm interested to see, because you do have Carrier signing on that contract, but then you also have Dante Fabro still, and you have Spencer Stastny, who, is not guaranteed by any means to have a roster spot on opening night. So I think it'll be interesting to see what happens there.
You guys took all the lineup stuff, and I agree with both of you guys. I think the lineup below the top line, and of course the blue line, all fascinating stuff to see what happens. I think watching some of who of these rookies we just saw, some of these younger players, is anyone good enough to crack the lineup on opening night? That's always, you got to be really good to do that. And it's one thing to come up mid-season. It's another thing to win a roster spot out of camp. And if anybody's capable of doing that, that will be something of huge note. Honestly, I'm going to go back to what you said, Michael, and I tend to agree that I don't think this preseason will be as covered as the PK Subban summer of 16, but I do think it's the closest thing we've had before and since is going to be this training camp. I think the closest thing we'll have to PK Subban. And frankly, I don't know what you guys remember about 2016, but I think expectations for this team are much higher. Honestly, I got to go back and check where they were predicted to finish in the Central Division. Remember, we all know 8 seed going into the playoffs, last out of 16 going into the playoffs. So I'm curious, from a national media perspective, they are all going to descend upon Steven Stamkos. I think there are more than just him from an interesting story standpoint, but there's expectations on this team. And it reminds me of a conversation I had with, excuse me, I'm all verklempt here. Pekka Rinne, the first time I ever met him, 2016, it's about the same time of year, September, they're opening training camp. I just started on 102.5, and I go into the locker room to sort of meet everybody for the first time. And the first conversation I ever had with Pekka Rinne, after having been a season ticket holder and a fan before this, now I've moved on to the beat and I'm covering him. And the very first conversation I had with Pekka Rinne was about expectations and pressure, and how all he wanted, and I don't know why this struck me, but all he wanted was for there to be more pressure and more expectation, and to have all of it like put on him and the team. He welcomed all of that. And I just remember thinking, of course, in only Pekka Rinne's way, how like wise it was to say, look, we don't want to be a team that's entering the preseason under the radar. We want it. We welcome the heat. We want the smoke. We want the pressure. We want the expectations. But with that, guys, comes a lot of criticism. And it means that if you have a bad stretch in October or November, you're going to take some heat. And this organization is going to take heat if they don't play well. And there's going to be stretches where they don't play well. That's the nature of the game. How they handle that is one of the things I am most interested in. And I don't know if I can learn any of that in training camp, but it's the thing is sticking with me now as I think about this team going into the season.
And that interaction should surprise nobody, because, I mean, I remember Pekka Rinne saying he would rather face 70 shots a game than 30 shots a game. No head coach wants that. So I think it's interesting how the veterans and the players like the Pekka Rinnes want the expectations, whereas some of the younger guys probably don't know how to handle that. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Emma.
No, I was, in agreement with you, Braden. I just think I'm not sure how much of an indication we're going to get during training camp of this, but something I am looking forward to for the season in general is to see how the other players handle the heightened expectations, not just the younger guys, the ones who haven't really faced it before, but even guys like Philip Forsberg, Roman Josi, like how are they going to, and I don't mean that in a sense to call them out or say that I don't think they'll handle it well. I'm just saying that I think it'll be interesting to see, maybe how they kind of level up, because there's no doubt. At least just being a member of the media, you can tell there's a lot more attention on this team now. Obviously because of Stamkos, but with the other additions too.
Yeah, I think it'll also be interesting because, you talk about playing with those expectations. Some of the younger guys on this roster, other than last year, they haven't really had, they didn't have expectations until they went on the 18-game point streak and got into the playoffs. But for the most part, the 4 or 5 guys that were on this roster that were in the Cup final, they're the only ones that know how to play with those kind of expectations. And Barry Trotz said, this is why you go out and you get those serial winners like Stamkos and like Marchessault. So if they battle that adversity and they get off to a bad start, or they have a really bad stretch where they're, 2-8 in a 10-game stretch or whatever, like, I'm curious to see what the backlash is for Barry Trotz, because he's selling the fan base on going out and getting these guys who have won cups before to bring them here to win a cup here. And if you have a team that is full of these quote unquote serial winners and you're not meeting expectations, or you're not playing like the team everyone thinks they should be, which I think the expectation is at least Western Conference final appearance, maybe second round. But I think the pressure is to get to the Western Conference final. If they fall anything short of that, the unruliness of this fan base is going to be off the charts.
Well, Adam said the same thing on last week's episode. He said, look, Western Conference final is the goal. And that should be the expectation. Anything less than that would be viewed as sort of a failure. I don't necessarily agree with him on that. I think, Michael, I'm more with you. I think a second round, if you look good during the regular season, all the pieces look like they work together, and they get to the second round, I think that's completely where they need to be. Are you competing for a spot in the Western Conference final? Anything above that is gravy. Anything below that is disappointing, but I expect that. And I'm curious, Emma, from your perspective, because you were around some of the younger players more than I have been, who is wired to handle all of this? And I agree, I don't think we can learn much in a Gold Star showcase. I don't think we can learn any of that. But I'm curious, like if Luke Evangelista hypothetically ends up winning the job on the second line, isn't that an indicator that he is mentally, physically, and where he needs to be to handle expectations and pressure, both, again, physically and mentally? He's put in the work to be ready to take that spot. Is that the way we should look at some of these battles in training camp?
Yes, with an asterisk. I would say that maybe a potential concern that I have, or maybe not even concern, but a question I have is whether Andrew Brunette will be willing to even entertain that. I mean, during training camp, he'll entertain everything, I'm sure, but it's more about, we saw what happened last year. And again, different team this year, you know, you've got some more depth than you did last year, but we saw last year how much he relied on those, you know, those top 4 guys, and to kind of play those big minutes and like handle those big roles, maybe because he didn't feel that he could trust the younger guys or the depth players with those opportunities. And again, it's great when you have a Colton Sissons who can do anything, but should he be the one centering your second line? Probably not. You know, not if you have the forward depth that you have now. So I would maybe challenge Andrew Brunette to kind of think outside the box a little bit and maybe just try, you know, entertain the idea of giving some of these younger players or these depth players, you know, some elevated roles, because you don't know unless you try.
Along with that, I would challenge Andrew Brunette to challenge Luke Evangelista. I mean, we all saw last year when he was in a top 6 role, he had some swagger about him. He was taking more shots. His positioning was a lot better. He was doing a lot of the things that I think we expected to see from him in the beginning of the year. It just wasn't feasible because he was playing, you know, with Michael McCarron and Colton Sissons and those guys. So I would like to see Andrew Brunette kind of get a little bit more ballsy in what he's doing in training camp. Because I mean, I don't fault him for last year. He's a new hire. He's coming in. He literally has 2 to 3 weeks to learn the lay of the land, see which player does what, figure out his line combinations, figure out his defensive line combinations, all this stuff. I mean, and we talked about how good Parsonen looked in training camp last year, and then he had like a really good start, like the first 8 to 10 games. And then after that, he just kind of disappeared and got sent back to Milwaukee. So I don't fault him for training camp last year. Now that he has a year under his belt, he's taken this team to the playoffs. He knows what works. I would like to see Andrew Brunette, I don't want to say be a little bit harder on players like Evangelista and maybe Tommy Novak, but I would like to see him challenge them a little bit more, because I think we all know that they're capable of more. And I would like to see Brunette try to challenge them to get them to rise to the occasion, because I think, like Braden said, if you begin the year and Luke Evangelista is on the second line, you're going to know it's because he earned it and it wasn't given to him, because there's so much potential with this team. And I think Andrew Brunette is looking at it like, what's the best possible, as he should, what's the best possible combination of lines to score us the most goals. And if Luke Evangelista is on the second line, I think that gives you the better chance than having Tommy Novak there. But I think Tommy Novak is a little bit more of a safer choice right now.
Yeah, I agree with that. Again, hard to analyze big picture capabilities to handle pressure and expectations and in a training camp situation. It is interesting to watch battles, right? Like blue line battles, line battles. What does the coach come up with? Who's he putting together? What does the power play look like? You know, all that stuff is fun. And frankly, to look at rookies, to look at young players and to see how well they, you know, can any of them get into the mix here. We've got some questions here, so I just want to roll through a few of these. Morning, y'all. That's not a question. It's just a comment, says Mr. Brazil. Any news on Tomasino, says Brittany. And the answer is really just no still. But I'm curious because I know they put in a qualifying offer and they've gotten the other 2 signed, right? Parson and Delgado are signed. My question to you guys is why? What can you infer from their current situation with Tomasino? The fact that he's not been signed, what does it tell you?
I actually reached out to Tomasino's agent to figure out what's going on and see if they're even in ongoing negotiations. And in typical agent fashion, I have got no response back. I didn't expect to, but at least doing the work, putting the feelers out there. Me personally, I think it's because the holdup is, what is his role? Is he going to be in the NHL? Are you going to give him a 2-way contract where he has a different salary in the AHL and the NHL? Because he's no longer waiver exempt. So if he's on the NHL roster, he's on the NHL roster. And the only way you can put him back in Milwaukee is if you expose him to waivers. Someone's probably going to claim him because he's a 22-year-old former first round pick, just like Ellie Tolvanen. I think if fans have to live through that again, like, Nashville might implode. So I think the holdup is, what is the contract going to look like? Is it going to be a 2-way deal, a 1-way deal? What is the path forward to him to the NHL? Because once he gets back on the NHL roster, like, he's on the NHL roster, there's no turning back. And I think if I had to guess, that's probably what I would say the holdup is.
Yeah, I would agree. Also, just going to throw out there, I'm not reporting anything. This is just, a spicy take. There's also still a possibility that he gets traded. I'm not saying that I think that's likely or that I've heard anything to that effect, but it's still a possibility. And it's going to be easier to trade his rights than it's going to be to trade a contract. So,
especially a one-way deal.
Correct. So
I'll put it out there. I've heard that they've been shopping him around. Like I even reported that before the draft. Like I heard they were trying to move Glass and they were trying to move Tomasino. We already saw Cody Glass has been traded. I think there's been deals discussed for Tomasino, but then you're looking at, like Emma said, it's easier to trade his rights than it is to trade a player that's locked into a contract. Because if you trade him to another team and he's on the NHL roster, it's the same thing. They can't send him back to the minor leagues without having to expose him to waivers. And I also think too, like, what's fair compensation? Because I think if you're going off of his upside, the Predators are probably going to ask for a little bit more. If you're going off a base of what he's done so far, the team that's wanting to acquire him is probably going to want to offer a little bit less. There's just so many moving pieces to this. So I think it's, what does the deal look like? Is he an NHL or an AHL player to start the year or throughout the year? If you're trading him, who are you trading him to? What's the compensation? Like, there's just so many pieces, and I think Barry Trotz is taking his time because he's wanting to lay everything on the table and figure out what's the best move for the team.
I think you guys nailed the two reasons why this is not done, which is, what is his role on our team if he's going to be here, and number two, why would we sign him if we're trying to trade him? So I think both of those things are the reason nothing has happened. Let me ask you this a different way then. What is the best case scenario? Is it that he figures things out, wins a spot on the roster? Is it they get a contract done, it's a two-way deal, and he's in Milwaukee to start because he doesn't have to clear waivers? Or that they trade him? What is best for the Predators? What is best for the player here?
I think what's best for Tomasino probably would be to be traded. I think a change of scenery would do him good, just because, whether fair or not, there are really high expectations on him as a former first-round pick. Like I mentioned, the whole Ellie Tolvanen thing is giving fans nightmares, like having to possibly relive that. And I don't think this franchise can handle another failed first-round pick, just because they've been great in rounds 2 through 7, but they haven't really nailed a first-round pick. And they just traded Askarov. I mean, the discord between first-round picks in this team is it used to be kind of just like a joke. Now it's becoming a real thing where they can't draft well in the first round. And I think for Tomasino, going somewhere else where you don't have those expectations from the fan base would be great. But I think the best thing for the Predators would be for him to make the opening night roster, and to secure his spot on the team and not really have to worry about last year where he's healthy scratch for like 10 games or whatever. And not having to worry about anything at all, because we've seen the skill. The upside is there. The skill is there. The offensive prowess, it's all there. But for whatever reason, he hasn't been able to align everything perfectly. So I think best case scenario for the Predators is he makes the team, and then he goes out and he puts up, a 40 to 50 point season.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously the best case scenario for the team. Do I think it's the likeliest scenario? Probably not. I'm in agreement that I think, I tend to be more sympathetic toward the player in this situation. I am personally on team trade him, not because, I love him. I love the kid. I think he's really talented. I think he's going to do great things, but I think that he is the ideal candidate for a change of scenery for all the reasons that Michael just mentioned. And I think, for me, prioritizing the development of the player, and what's going to be the most mutually beneficial, that's where I stand on it. Again, I love the kid. I know people probably don't want to hear that, but I would trade him if it were up to me.
I do think trading him is the best for him. Fresh start, fresh system, fresh opportunity, fresh everything. I do think that's what's best for him. I think what's best for the team is that he and Juuso Parssinen, and add anyone else you want, because we're going to get to a couple of questions from Brandon and Josh here in a second, that they've developed so much that they're playing such good hockey that they force their way into the lineup. And I don't know who that means gets knocked out. I don't know if there is a player. There's one spot essentially in the top 12, unless you're looking to upgrade a Cole Smith or Jankowski spot, I guess. I don't know. But that's
don't be coming for Cole Smith.
I know. And honestly, I don't think Tomasino fits on a fourth line in general. I think Parssinen does, which I think that's why he has the leg up on that spot. But I think if you're asking me, who plays better on the wing on on line 3, or who's better at center and wing. Both of them actually would be pretty good at if they realize their potential. I'm saying that's the best case scenario, is that he's the best version of himself and he's too good to keep out of the lineup. I mean, that's the truth of the matter there. I think this ends in a trade. Let's call that informed speculation. I think this ends in a trade, and I think it's before he signs a contract, and that's why the contract hasn't been signed. That would be my guess. All right, a couple more questions here. Go to Sinkers Beverages, please. Sinkers Beverages in East Nashville, 3-time liquor store of the year. Fantastic walk-in beer fridge. They also have non-alc stuff as well. They got THC stuff. They got all kinds of stuff. If you're trying to stay dry or stay a little healthier, that's fine too. Not me. It's the fall. It's time to drink beer and bourbon. That's the time of year it is for me. So I'm at Sinkers all the time, and I got in-laws coming in. You got family coming in. You got to have some good party favors, and Sinkers Beverages has you covered. So make sure you swing by. Great wine selection. I don't know anything about wine. Are either of you wine drinkers?
I am, but only I don't drink red. I'm a bad Italian. I don't like red wine.
Do you do like the swirl and the sniff and the whole deal? Like, I don't know how to do any of that.
No.
I definitely can pick up notes on a bourbon, but I don't know how to do it on wine. But because I don't know anything about wine, this is where Sinkers comes in. Wife needs something because the in-laws are in town this week. Hey, we're going to have dinner with so-and-so. We need a nice bottle of wine. What are we having? I go to Sinkers. I say, here's what we're having. Can you give me something in this ballpark? And they help me out. Price and quality. They take care of me. So Josh says, after hearing how good he looked last preseason, I'm curious to see if Tanner Molendyk can get the 9-game tryout with the team. My short answer is no. But I am, as a president of the Tanner Molendyk fan club, I'm not objective in this analysis. So
I was gearing up. I was hoping that I would have to argue with you, Braden, on this. I thought you were going to be like, yep, send him, give him a spot on the team.
Where?
Exactly.
I
think we would all love to see Molendyk get the 9-game tryout, but the problem is if you do that, one of Fabro, Shen, or Stastny, well, two of Fabro, Shen, and Stastny are sitting for 9 games. That's the problem. I think he's talented enough to where I think he has the skill to where he could warrant getting a look and possibly making the roster, but there's just, it's a numbers game. There's too much crowding, so I don't think it's a realistic possibility.
All right, we all agree. Not going to happen.
There's no rush either.
No, I agree. Yeah. I agree.
The kid's 19.
We will get to Tanner Molendyk in a moment. Got a chance to watch him over the weekend. I know we got the prospect guide coming up, so we'll talk about that in just a second. But Brandon asked a very good question, which is how many spots are actually up for grabs in this year's camp, 1 or 2? We sort of just touched on it, but we can go a little deeper on this. And Eric responded that he says there's 1 D-man and maybe 2 or 3 forwards, including a center. How many spots are legitimately up for grabs, and who are the players that you would put in that conversation?
I think there's only 2 spots open. I think 1 on defense, and it's going to be a battle between Stastny, Fabro, and Shen. And I think there's 1 spot in the bottom 6, probably on the 4th line, because the way I see it shaken out is Forsberg, Riley, Nyquist, Stamkos, Novak, Marchessault. That's your top 6 in some form or fashion, whether Stamkos is center, wing, whatever. That leaves Evangelista, Sissons, Jankowski, Smith, McCarron, and we'd like to think Parsonen is the other guy that's going to get that spot. I think if Tomasino is not traded and he's signed, he could potentially compete for that spot. But I really feel like there's 1 spot open in the bottom 6, and I don't even really feel like it's open because I think Parson's going to claim it.
Yeah, I would agree.
That's the analysis you get here.
If you want someone who could contend other than Parsonen, I would say watch out for Ozzy Weisblatt. I've heard he's made a really good impression on the coaching staff. The Admirals coaches love him. I think the Predators coaching staff, they're really rooting for him. And I think he looked pretty good in the rookie showcase. I think if he has a really good training camp, I'm saying there's like a 5 to 10% chance he actually gets the spot. I think it's Parsons. It's very slim. But if you want someone who could potentially be a dark horse to make a spot out of camp, I would pay attention to Weisblatt.
And to that end, I think I've been getting a lot of questions, from listeners and readers who are like, of those near ready prospects, who could potentially crack the NHL roster out of camp, to which I would push back and say, I don't think a lot of these guys are as near ready as people think they are. It was very different, when there were more spots up for grabs on the roster. Right now, with what this team is trying to accomplish right now and getting all of these free agents in, Stamkos, Marchessault, Shea, really just full sending towards the Stanley Cup, this is not the time to be giving these guys kind of their tryout if there's any like doubt that they might be ready. And again, Zach LaRue, fantastic season and postseason with Milwaukee. Joachim Kemmel, Fedor Svechkov, all of those guys are guys that I'm getting asked about a lot when it's like, oh, which one could potentially crack the roster? And I'm like, quite frankly, none of them. And that's not a knock on them. It's just where this team is right now. It's going to be more beneficial for them to get another year in Milwaukee than for them to be competing for roster spots that quite frankly don't exist.
Yeah,
this will piss a lot of people off. There's only one player on the Milwaukee Admirals who I think is NHL ready, and it's Mark Del Gaizo. And he proved last year when he came up, and he only played 9 games, but he didn't make any mistakes. He looked the part of an NHL defenseman, and don't mistake what I'm saying. He's not a Roman Josi first pairing defenseman. He is a Dante Fabro third pairing defenseman, but he's the only person in Milwaukee that you could put him on the opening night roster and not really have to worry about him looking at a place. I love LaRue, and I love the player that he is and everything he can do. He's not ready. I think Kemmel's going to be dynamite once he gets to the NHL. He is not ready. I've been beating that drum for 2 years. There's all this excitement about these guys, and I understand it. They're not ready. All of them, with the exception of Del Gaizo, and Del Gaizo could still use a little bit more seasoning, but all of them need at least 1, probably 2 more years in the AHL before they're even close to ready.
So there's a lot there, and I want to react to a lot of it because I think it's a lot of good stuff. First of all, Eric says Parsonen has the advantage for sure because he's like Sissons, useful as a potato, big and strong and gritty. I think that was a compliment to Parsonen, I think. Brad says, from what I have seen, I think Gibson is more ready than Molendijk. I actually think they're about the same. They have different things they need to work on, but from what I've seen, I would say they're both pretty much on the same path. They were drafted around the same time in the same draft, and I think maybe Gibson's more physically prepared. I think Molendijk is a headier player and a more skilled player, and I think he'll be ready. I think this is what's fascinating about this, and I agree with both you guys. And just to wrap up on the D point, I think it's Schenn, Fabro, and Stastny for a starting spot, but because you carry the extra defenseman, that the defense core seems pretty set, right? Like if you're going to carry 7 guys, isn't that like that's where they're at? There might be 1 extra forward, right? 1 extra forward, 1 goalie, and 1 defenseman. Am I wrong on that? I mean.
Yeah, I think it's, again, they're going to compete to see who gets the starting spot there. But I mean,
the opening day roster is set though with those 7 guys, right?
Yeah, the only one that you could maybe, riff on, there's the potential that he gets beat out by someone else is Stastny, but that's because he's on the 2-way contract. And I mean, again, I agree with Michael. Del Gaizo, I would have no problem with him making the roster out of camp. I do think he's the only guy on Milwaukee who's ready right now.
You're saying forward or defenseman, right? You're saying any player.
Correct. Yeah, I don't think anyone else is ready. There are guys who I think are going to be ready eventually, and they're going to be great. But I feel like Preds fans have gotten so spoiled by watching what happened with Luke Evangelista 2 years ago. That is not normal. That's not what happens usually. Guys don't come up and immediately just get it when they get to the NHL. Yeah. Like they need at least 2 to 3 years in the AHL before they can be ready. And that is normal. And that isn't, a knock on those players or anything. That is just what is basically the standard development trajectory for any NHL player. So that's what I say with that. But I think that, yeah, for the defense, like, again, I wouldn't be upset if Stastny got it. I wouldn't be upset if Del Gaizo got it. I would say that 7th spot is really the only one that is potentially up for grabs.
No, I agree with you guys. And I think ultimately what you want is you want a set of prospects that offers you different things so that if you need to make roster adjustments as the season goes along, as you learn what your identity is going to be with this new collection of players, maybe you don't need as much Parsonen and you need more Tomasino. Maybe you need more Parsonen and less Tomasino. Like you just don't know what you're going to need as the season goes along. And I think having the options is what you need. You're going to experience injuries. You're going to need options. You might need someone that you can call up for 8 games that's got a nasty shot to play on the side of the power play. Maybe that's where Kemmel gets the crack. You just don't know what you're going to need over the course of a season. And I'm not yet ready to go into the rookie showcase conversation yet, but watching 3 pretty good teams, right? Carolina, Florida, and Tampa Bay, all high expectations, very talented teams. You don't normally have high expectations in the NHL and also have a great farm system at the same time. It's fairly rare because the way you get the farm system is to suck, and the way you get rid of your farm system is to be great. So the Predators are also in a unique situation that they have high expectations, but also have stockpiled players in their farm system. I think we saw that with the showcase. There's not nearly as many like high-level, elite-level prospects on the other teams, but that's because their rosters are so good. And so the Preds are in a pretty advantageous situation with that. And
there's a reason Vegas's farm system sucks every year, because they're trading off their 1, 2, and 3 top picks to go and build up a championship caliber roster.
Not to go back to your both of y'all's sort of original point here on the lines, do you think there's anything unforeseen that like Nyquist moving down the lineup and all of a sudden Evangelista's on the top line and that changes the way some of these roster battles take place? Is there anything that is out of the ordinary, out of sort of the traditional, all right, second line center, fourth line wing, third pairing defenseman? Those are the obvious ones. Is there something we're missing here that we haven't touched on from a training camp perspective?
I think there's absolutely a chance that the top line gets broken up. I'm not saying I think it should be or what, but I think that a lot of people are treating it as a foregone conclusion that the top line is going to be the same as it was last year. And it very well may be, but I think that, it's certainly not a foregone conclusion. And we've talked about this before, that training camp is about trying all the different combinations, seeing what you got, who has chemistry with each other, who complements each other's skills the best, etc. So training camp, again, like, I don't know how much you're really going to learn from training camp as far as who exactly the first line will be on opening night, but I do think there is a very decent chance. I don't think that Andrew Burnett's going to go into camp with the thought like, all right, let's see how we can mix this up, because obviously the top line was their best line last year. So I don't think he's going to be going into it thinking like, all right, we got to move some things around, but you have to have an open mind and understand that I think there is a very good chance that line gets broken up. How exactly that looks, whether it's O'Reilly or Nyquist or Forsberg who moves around, like I don't know. And that I think will be interesting to see if it does happen.
And to Emma's point, it kind of reminds me, I have the vibe of a couple years ago when the Predators signed Matt Duchene. We already knew what the Jofa line gave you. We already knew what they were capable of. You had a year and a half of seeing how good they were together. The very first practice after they signed Matt Duchene, it was Forsberg and Matt Duchene, and I forgot who they rotated in and out with that. But and Forsberg and Duchene looked like they had really good chemistry together. And that is what training camp is for. You already know what works. Go find what else could possibly work. So don't be surprised if the very first line combination that Zach Gilchrist, the Preds reporter, tweets out, it's Forsberg and Stamkos and Marchessault, or some weird combination. That's not going to be what they're going to roll with. I mean, it might be, but I doubt it. That's not going to be what it's looking like. This next 2-3 week period is to experiment with what could possibly work. If you head into the regular season and Nyquist gets injured, you're going to need to find out who you can put on that top line that can help pick up the production and replace him. That's what training camp is for.
Everyone freak out when you see Cole Smith and Michael McCarron on the top line with Philip Forsberg. Everyone just
that happened last year, and people lost their minds.
That's truly just trolling the fan base at that point. If you're doing that, this is what my mind immediately went to O'Reilly on the top center, because I think that's kind of the one we got.
Did you mean to go O'Reilly? Like the song?
I did not.
That's what I heard.
But like Stamkos, O'Reilly, Marchessault on the top line, sounds pretty fun.
I have a hard time seeing Philip Forsberg getting moved off the top line. And Philip,
what would help Tommy Novak though? Having Philip Forsberg, a big power forward to your side, might help you out though. You never know.
But I don't disagree, but I don't think Andrew Brunette, frankly,
I agree.
What is going to help Tommy Novak?
We're in the first week of camp brainstorming part of the season here.
Hitting a weight room is going to help Tommy Novak.
Yeah,
I agree. He's always going to be the same size though. Brandon says seems like the timing for these young guys will be perfect for when the older contracts are winding down. I think that was ultimately Barry Trotz's entire strategy, big picture vision of the franchise.
It's almost as if it was designed to happen that way.
I know. Crazy. It's almost like these guys do things on purpose. So there you go. And then Cody says there is no top line. It's 1A and 1B. Remember? LOL. Lols. So this brings us to the rookie showcase here for just a second. Go to Sinkers Beverages. Sign up for good coverage at lowerbroadhockey.com. The rookie showcase, to y'all's point, there's not a lot of these players that I think are ready and prepared to jump into the starting lineup right now. I think we've already kind of mentioned the ones that are, but I do think you saw, like, my first overarching takeaway from watching the rookie showcases was that we were looking at the AHL starting roster by and large. There's a few names that aren't there, a few names that will be there, whatever. But basically, I thought we looked at the top line defense pairing. We maybe. We were looking at the starting goaltender. Maybe we were looking at the top line for the offense with I think it was Schaefer, Campbell, and Weisblatt. I was talking to some folks that they think that's probably the top line in Milwaukee.
We're looking at future 30 goal scorer Easton Armstrong.
I was looking literally 5 feet away from Fedor Svechkov, who was sitting right in front of me and a couple other reporters, and Hal and Pete and Terry. He was sitting right there, and I'm like, that's a NHL prospect. It looks like he's 13 years old. It's ridiculous.
Oh, just wait. He was sitting next to me for the game against Tampa, and he looks a lot bigger if you see him next to me, who's 5'3" on a good day. You're like, oh, okay.
Nothing will ever top. Do you guys remember a couple years ago, Tyler Gallagher, who he was like a really big popular college free agent, and he was a really good scorer, and they signed him as I believe a UDFA, and the kid was like 5'4". I actually bumped into him in the hallway, and I was like, "Oh, sorry, dude." And then someone came up to me and was like, "You just bumped into one of the players." I was like, "That's not a player." They're like, "No, that's Tyler Gallagher." And I was like, "Who the hell is that?" Yeah.
Meanwhile,
he's tiny.
Meanwhile, did you all see Cooper Black, the goaltender for the Florida Prospectus? 6'10"? Are you kidding?
There was a debate on whether he was on the Preds release he was listed at 6'8", and on the game release he was at 6'10", and we were like, "How'd you grow 2 inches from this morning? Like, how did that happen?"
Honestly, like,
he was very lanky. Yeah,
big dude. Even
not to be converted with Kevin Lankinen.
Yeah, but after the game, in the his media availability, Hiroki Goisek, I think, was asked about him. Like, how did you find space? He's like, he's like the walrus in those Mass Mutual commercials, and it's like, how'd you find space to get around him into the net? And he was like, yeah, I ran into him in the hallway earlier, and it was like, good Lord, like, I don't even.
Hiroki Gossage, really nice goal on the Friday game.
Yes, and he's not a small guy either. He's like, what, 6'4"?
I will say the blonde sitting next to Fedor Svechkov, not much taller than 5'3".
That was his wife.
I'll say that. Right. I don't know. I'm not
blonde.
I didn't say it was right or wrong.
Not to be confused with me, the other blonde sitting next to Fedor Svechkov.
Yeah, I thought that was going to be a bad joke once I heard the blonde.
Yeah.
No, it was just it was the woman he was sitting with. That's all I'm saying, guys. I'm not inferring anything untoward here. That's not what I was trying to do.
And that would be his wife.
Right, exactly. First of all, way too young to be married. That's all I gotta say. Like, you should not be married until you're at least 30. That's my opinion, and that goes for all of the male species. But that's just my opinion. That's just
comment section's about to blow up.
That's fine. Most of us aren't ready. It's fine. It's okay.
I would agree. I've had to date all your sorry asses in your 20s. I would agree. You need to at least be 30 for me to even entertain a conversation.
You're like the Carl Taylor of men in their 20s in Nashville. You are developing them for a relationship in their 30s.
I'm like, where is this going?
No, you're training them. You're training them up.
Normally that would be a compliment, but I don't think that's the comparison you want.
It is absolutely a compliment. You're developing them and then trading them off to another franchise.
Well, I am now being, compensated fairly for all my service. I am dating a man in his 30s, and I'm very happy. So
there you go.
It just took me a little bit to get there.
Look, my wife and I went to high school and college together. We didn't really know each other in high school or college. I met her in New Year's Eve 2012, 2013. So I was, yes, Kevin says husband trainer. Yes, there you go. It's a little weird when you put it that way. But the point of my story, real quickly, is that my wife and I joke all the time. We met when I was 30 years old, 31 years old, and she was like 27. we joke all the time, had we met each other at any other point in our lives, we would not have ended up together. I needed to be at a certain maturity level for me to be of note to her. And that's how it works.
That's more of a you thing than a general guy thing, but I mean,
you think I'm any different than the rest of them?
I would say I would be willing to guess that would be the case for a lot of men. Even me, like if I hear stories about my boyfriend from when he was younger, I was like, yeah, I would not have talked to you back then.
No, I'm not downplaying at all. There are a lot of men out there that do need to grow up. And coincidentally, I got married when I was 31, but it had nothing to do with Braden's dating rules. I just didn't find the right person until later in life. So
it's not a rule. It's just my opinion, man. I think most men should not be married until they're 30 because they're not. The frontal lobe doesn't even develop until you're like 25. Like it's
at least
and that's for men.
There have been conflicting reports on that lately it's like 27, 28.
I would not be shocked at all. The female brain develops faster. This is not an opinion. This is science. It also is a generalization. It doesn't apply to everybody. Come on. You guys are smart enough to know.
That's literally what I just said. And you're like, oh, does it?
No, all those faces at me. I'm not. Kevin says, I didn't grow up till about 35. So that tracks. There you go. Thank you, Kevin.
I don't think anyone ever fully grows up. I think you hit a certain age where you're like, okay, I need to stop doing dumb shit I did, 5 years ago.
You got to start drinking light beer again. It's ridiculous. Your body doesn't like all the other stuff. Go to Singer's Beverages for all the good local breweries in Nashville, by the way. Brandon says, now we're off the rails. Brandon says, I couldn't take care of myself in my 20s, much less anyone else. Agreed. Totally agree. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with any of this. It's okay.
But the difference between us and Fedor Svechkov is he has a very lucrative career path to where he is set up for the rest of his life, you would think. And I'm sure his wife found that a very desirable trait with him.
He's also from Russia, where they all get married very young.
Look, cultural differences are a real thing. And that's okay. I did see him out in the lobby during intermission, though, talking to every Russian player from all 4 teams. We're always in the lobby during intermission, just talking. I just love walking by him, listening to the Russian, going man, should have studied more foreign languages.
I know. Hey, my Spanish translation degree is collecting a lot of dust up on my wall over here. I should have taken Russian.
No, you cover baseball, so it's very productive and helpful in baseball. If you're at down at spring training, you're good to go. All right, takeaways from Rookie Showcase here before we get to the prospect. By the way, prospect guide, Gallagher put that together. I think it's 17 pages, top 25 prospects. Make sure you go subscribe to lowerbroadhockey.com for just that, if nothing else. Adam and I are going to start our second podcast. Of course, that'll only be for subscribers on Mondays, coming up on Lower Broad Hockey as well. Just some you can if it's broad generalizations, if it's specific player related, I'd like to hear what you guys have to say about what you saw from the Rookie Showcase.
Yeah, I think I mentioned earlier, there wasn't really too much for me to take away. I mean, you have 18 to 20-year-old players playing against other 18 to 20-year-old players, so the competition level is kind of there's a bar there. So I think we're going to learn more from these guys when you get to training camp. But like I said, Weisblatt looked pretty good. Gibson, I think, was someone who really stood out to me. Like we always knew he was solid defensively. I think he flashed a little bit of offensive upside. That'll be nice. And just watching him, it's nice to see a 6'3", 6'4" Predators defenseman again, because they kind of got down to the 5'10" to 6'1" range. So seeing a big, not comparing him to Shea Weber, but seeing someone that looked like Shea Weber out on the ice was nice. And Joey Willis actually looked really impressive too. I think he's someone who's really, over the last half season, has really climbed the ranks, and he's someone to watch out for. I don't know if he has a shot of making the roster anytime in the next 3 or 4 years, but he's definitely someone that looked good. And I think Zach LaRue he looked a little bit tame. He was very subdued out there. I think people expected to see him go out and just elbow people and just rip helmets off and stuff like that. And I think we're seeing the beginning stages of a much more mature Zach LaRue. Yeah. Yes, I think
maybe he's ready for marriage. Even
I think I wouldn't go that far.
I agree.
I think the coaching staff, really, the lessons started to sink in, because there was a lot of talk about, and I even wrote a full blown story on, is he too much of a loose cannon for this team? And I think the coaching staff made a priority this summer to sit down with him. I think he even got to Nashville a week or two earlier before camp started, and they really kind of hit the nail on the head of you can't keep doing this dumb shit anymore. And I think we're going to see a different Zachary LaRue this year out on the ice.
So real quickly here, and Emma, I want you to take the mic and run here. I did ask somebody inside the organization about, like, is it true that you'd rather have, and I think my common belief is it's always better to have someone that's too much that you can train back into sort of the right place versus someone who's not enough and you've got to push them constantly to get into that right place. And that's been my assumption about this all along. And this person was like, oh yeah, you'd absolutely rather have a guy that you have to jerk the leash on a little bit versus having to like poke and prod to get going.
That's why Kevin Fiala only lasted here for a very short time, because they were always having to get on him because they knew he was capable of more, and he just never did it.
By the way, I haven't heard a Jofa reference in a long time, Michael, so I appreciate that. Let's check that off the bingo card today.
I'm here to serve the people.
All right, Emma, what about you?
Yeah, I think, you mentioned Willis. I would add in Reed Schaefer and Austin Roost as two guys who, saw them last year in their first rookie tournament with the Preds. And I noticed a very, notable year-over-year difference just in the confidence level with which those guys played. And even the goal that Joey Willis had against Tampa, I believe. I think it was one of those that it was not a pretty goal. It was a greasy, let me just throw my entire body at the net and hope that the puck bounces off of it kind of thing. But that's the kind of play that I think that players like him, like Schaefer, like Roost, maybe would not have had the confidence to make in their first tournament, because, there's so much, you have this pressure of like, oh, I have to be perfect. I have to get set up just so, and I have to, do everything by the book, do it the right way. Now you're kind of seeing guys that are, maybe starting to relax a little bit. At least that's what I could tell. That's what it looked like to me. So that was good to see. Agree. Zach LaRue, uncharacteristically subdued, maybe a sign of things to come. Leave all the elbowing and helmet throwing to Kalen Lind and Nav Mutter, because there was quite a bit of that going on. Yeah.
I do think I want to touch on real quick. Roost is someone who I think could be a quick riser as well. And we've debated the legitimacy of Corey Pronman's prospect rankings, but the one he did 3 weeks ago, he has Roos as the number 10 ranked Preds prospect. He has him above Teddy Stiga and Zachary LaRue, so take it with a grain of salt. But I do think he's someone who is getting a little bit more attention nationally from some of the analysts and prospect writers. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's a name you heard a lot this year.
So first, I think it's how you watch this stuff. And I don't think you can watch this stuff and study like technique, formations, breakout, set up on the power play, play execution. I don't think these guys are all thrown together into a single team from kind of all over literally the world in a pretty short period of time. I don't think that you're looking out for those types of things, like the finely tuned details of how to play the game. I don't think is what you're looking at. I think you're looking at confidence. You're looking at skating. You're looking at playing with the puck, making plays happen. You're looking at physicality, work ethic, right? I think those are the things that I was paying attention to, less so than like, look at this guy's perfect technique on the breakout. Like, it's hard to do that in a group of players that are thrown together like that. And from that standpoint, I noticed Schaefer and Lind for sure from a physicality and execution standpoint. I also noticed Kalen Lind directing traffic at the faceoff dot a lot. He was taking faceoffs and he would look at people and he'd move people around like he was sort of in charge of things. That's the kind of little things you want to see. A little bit of leadership there from him. Schaefer was the same kind of way. Both guys flying all over the place, very physical. Molendijk and Ozzy Weisblatt are both very confident skaters. They play a confident style of game. They're confident with the puck. They clearly know what they are doing. And those are the things that that stand out to me. Yeah, sure. Hiroki's shot was really impressive, but like it so much could have gone into getting into that situation. You don't really know what that means. Every time Molendijk was out there, though, do I think he needs to, add a few things to his game, get a little bigger, maybe get more physical, willing to throw his body around? Like, maybe, but that's not necessarily what I'm looking at. For him, it's just he is clearly the best skater in the group. Like, it's just obvious that he's the most confident skater, that he sees things faster than everybody else. And there's a reason. I'm not trying to give it away here in the prospect guy, but there's a reason he's the best prospect in the farm system, in my opinion. And so those are the things I noticed. Weisblatt as well. Let's see. I thought Kemmel and to your point, Emma, about LaRue, both fairly quiet in general, but when given the opportunity, kind of coming on a break or streaking down the wing, like both those guys are clearly more talented than everybody else from an offensive standpoint. So I do think you want to see that. Like you want to see among the best players, we're the best players in the farm system. Like that's what you want to see. So that was my takeaway from all that stuff. So
I think one last thing I'll throw in there too that kind of stuck out to me was Kalen Lind is a beast. He reminded me, like, there were some Dustin Byfuglien-esque qualities about him in the showcase. Like, we already knew he was physical. He played with an edge. He was gritty. All those characteristics, the buzzwords that they like to throw out there. But he's
agitator.
Yeah, he's someone that I think he would rather hit you than score a goal, and that's kind of scary when you're going up against someone like that because, like, there's proof. Like, he will go out there and he will hit you, and he doesn't care. And I've heard that he was even in the weight room trying to bulk up and add an extra, 5 pounds of muscle or whatever to his frame. So when you have a player that is like a heat-seeking missile out there, and then he's bulking up in the offseason, like, look out for the rest of the QMJHL. I believe that's where he plays.
He also told us that in an effort to bulk up, that he is setting an alarm for 2 a.m. to wake up and eat another meal.
And if
he's someone you don't want to fuck with, man. If he's getting up at 2 a.m. and he's bulking up,
yeah, but I do question the decision making to eat exclusively at Applebee's. I don't. That is absurd to me.
Like, how much is your opinion on that biased by that stupid Walker Hayes song?
I don't even know who Walker Hayes is.
He sings that fancy like Applebee's song that they played at all the games.
I'm so glad I don't know what you're talking about. All I know is that eating at Applebee's only is no disrespect, unless if they want to sponsor the show, we'll take your money. But like, come on, you can eat at better places than Applebee's. I know you're not making a ton. You're not making that NHL money yet, but come on, you could do better than Applebee's. Anyway. All right, prospect guide, top 10 prospects. First of all, Michael, what's in this thing? Don't give it all away, but what's in it? What can people get if they go to Lower Broad Hockey right now and check out this prospect guide? And then I got a couple of questions for you guys about the entirety of the farm system.
Yeah, you can go sign up and subscribe, and hopefully you get your money's worth, at least just for this. 17 pages, like you said. I ranked the top 25 prospects in the farm system, and this is based off of, I put this in the group chat, so if you're a subscriber, you already know this information. This is based off of what I've seen watching these guys at development camp, rookie camp, the little bit of tape that I've watched on the internet, and then talking with scouts at McKean's Hockey and hockeyprospect.com. There's another one in there, some elite prospects guys. Like I talked to probably about 5 or 6 different scouts collectively to get their opinion on these guys, and then I ranked them based off of the input I got from them with kind of what I've seen watching them. And then the top 10 prospects did, we also have all their stats in there from last year, so you don't have to go look it up on Google or anywhere. But for the top 10 prospects, there's a scouting report on each based off of what I have seen, kind of letting you know what their strengths are, some things they might need to work on a little bit better. And then I put an NHL ETA for all the top 10 prospects, so you know roughly the timeline we're working on of when these guys should be able to make the roster, or at least be in consideration for that. And the top 10 prospects also have a little breakout box with a scout's view. I tried to pick in my opinion, the 2 best prospect guys are Scott Wheeler for The Athletic and Steven Ellis for Daily Faceoff. Corey Proman is still kind of considered the gold standard, if you will, of prospect writers, so I included some of his in there too. But just some added context on what some outside perspective on what those guys saw. And then there's for the guys that are 11 through 25. I did a little mini scouting report, if you will, just kind of based on what you can expect from them and some strengths for those guys. And then everybody else that wasn't in the top 25, I have them listed just so you know other forwards in totality, who all is in the system.
It is a one-stop shop for a guy that lasts all season long. Maybe by the end of the year, we'll do some updates on it sort of periodically, but it's a great reference guide to sort of understand.
I'm pretty sure the order of the top 25 or the top 10 at least would change by the end of the year, if I had to guess.
So you did the top 10. If you want to know who those names are, go look it up. Go pay for it. Mike did all the work, and he deserves the credit for it. Tanner Mollendijk.
For everyone that thinks I hate David Edstrom, he is in the top 10. I did put him in there. I don't, David, if you're listening, I do not hate you. I gave you your due in the magazine. Go read it.
59 minutes in, David Edstrom's listening to a podcast. Tanner Mollendijk is number 1. That's what I'm going to give away. That's all. But. And I'm proud of you for doing that, because I think he is number 1.
He was number 2 until they traded Askarov, which is why this thing got delayed, because Askarov was on the cover, and then I had to reorder it was insane having to move things around. It's like the world's most frustrating game of Tetris.
Where David Edstrom fits into this farm system, a new acquisition in the Askarov trade, he's in there. Andrew Gibson, a new acquisition this offseason. Where's he in there? Where are the new drafted players? I find it interesting, the two top picks in this year's draft, where you have both of them, Stiga and Surin. I disagree with you on the order with which you have those two players, but I think people are going to be really interested with what you've put in there about those guys. So make sure you go check. Stop. Make sure you go check out lowerbroadhockey.com. You're not letting me do the promotional part of this. I have another question for you.
Do it. Promote it all you want. I will say I was torn on Stiga and Surin, and I kind of got talked into where I ranked them based off of conversations I had with actual scouts who watch these guys play in person. So it wasn't just like, oh, I like one over the other. I put them where I did because I got really good feedback.
You don't have to defend yourself. If you think one guy is better than the other, I don't want to give it away. Go pay.
And for everyone that read my Matthew Wood story and thought that I was hating on him because I pointed out that he can't skate and he looks a little wonky on the ice, like I think you'll be surprised of where I ranked him too. There's a lot of good nuggets in there.
You do not have to defend your rankings. You do the work. I trust your rankings, and I trust them to be as honest as possible. All right. So quickly here. Relative to the history of this farm system, what's your takeaway from looking at this group? My personal takeaway is that it has more options at more positions than I've seen in the farm system for a long time, but I'm still unsure about the I think it's deeper than ever before into 14, 15, 16 potential contributors. I just don't know if they've got the elite names, which is sort of where the national media is going to sort of knock them down a peg, right? Is that about right?
Yeah, and I even started off the post where we have the prospect guide on the website, and I said each of the last 2 seasons, I was out there saying the Predators farm system is the best it's ever been. It's the best it's ever been. I don't think you can say that this year. I think this year's prospect pool is weaker than it was last year, and that's because you lost the crown jewel, Yaroslav Askarov, and he's the number one goalie in the NHL, number one goalie prospect in the NHL, and then in the NHL. Words are hard today, man. He's also. I mean, he's someone you look at regardless of position, and he's an elite blue chip prospect. I love Tanner Molendyk. I don't think he's on that level. He possibly could be next year. I don't think that they have
anyone. Hold your tongue, sir.
I don't think they have anyone in this farm system that is an elite blue chip level prospect like Askarov was. So I had to knock them for that. But I do think you're right. It is deeper than it's ever been before. The number of forwards you have that could potentially in 2 years be on this roster. I mean, if everyone on the Predators roster right now, their contract ran out and expired by 2027, I think you could field a team just from what you have in Milwaukee because there's so many different options. And then I think center is intriguing for me because I do think that they have built up the center depth, but the problem is I feel like they built up the center depth with 4 guys that are basically carbon copies of each other. So there's not a lot of variability there. You basically have 4 guys that go out and do the same thing. But one other thing I'll also point out is last year we were talking about how the defensive depth was so bad in the pipeline. I don't want to say that just solely trading for Andrew Gibson changed that, but trading for Andrew Gibson definitely changed that. Ryan Ufko is someone who I think is someone to watch out for. Viggo Gustafsson, who they drafted, I believe, in the 3rd round this year, someone who I think could be a quick riser. There's a lot. The defensive depth is way better than it was last year, and that was just some of the guys they already had in the system getting better, and then just some of the guys they added.
Any takes, Emma? You good?
Go download it, read it.
There you go. 4 of the top 10 were not on the roster 3 months ago. So that's a good way to look at what Barry Trotz did this summer from trading, acquisitions, and draft. So it is new. It's a new. If you did this exercise last year at this time, you'd have 5 different names in that top 10 probably based on various things that have happened. So great work, Michael. It's awesome. It's a one-stop shop for all things Preds farm system and prospects. Go check it out. lowerbroadhockey.com. Sinkers Beverages, of course, over in East Nashville, 3-time liquor store of the year. Make sure you support them and search Uber Eats and have that booze delivered directly to your house. We've got a game on Sunday, right? We got 2 games on Sunday, and that'll be actual NHL players playing in an actual NHL-ish type of game. And next week, we'll have lots to say about Predators doing hockey things in a rink. How about that, guys? It's here, finally. Can I say it now? Hockey season is here?
You can say it.
Now you can.
Hockey season is here, folks.
I love that someone with the last name Molendyk tweeted or commented on Twitter that Tanner is a gem. Bias, perhaps.
I'm his dad, but no bias. It's fine. It's fine. Emma, of course, you can follow her at Emma_Lingan. You can get to her on Twitter there. And of course, you can check her out, her weekly newsletter on lowerbroadhockey.com at MGSports_ for Michael as well. You can get to me at Braden Gall on Twitter. Thank you guys all for hanging out. Thank you guys for all the comments. I know you guys have been very active today. We really appreciate you guys. And of course, rate, review, and subscribe, thumbs up, all that great stuff. We do appreciate you. And we'll see you in the chat room over at Lower Broad Hockey. For Emma and Michael, I am Braden. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you guys next week.